Today, I'm joined by Dr. Behnaz Gholami, a social scientist and experience designer who has spent her career engineering change using human-centered design. We talk about the concept of change for the human experience and how organizations can beat the statistic of 75% of transformative change failing due to people readiness. Hi, Behnaz. Welcome to Humanly Possible. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Angela. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. Well, Behnaz, I wanted to hand it off to you to give the audience and the listeners just a little bit of an introduction. Who's Behnaz? What do you do professionally, but also what makes you human?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So my name is Behnaz Gholami, and I am a social scientist. I am a change strategist and experience designer in terms of career. But in terms of being a human, I am simply let's say. So I am a world traveler. I lived and worked in 4 continents. I am a nature lover, so I love trees. I think that I was a tree in my previous maybe lives. So and I love colors, and I love the concept of design and creativity. So this is who I am.
I love that. And the reason why this is such a great uh, synergy, I think, with who you are as a human and who you are as a professional is, you've been working on some research around bringing experience to change management. And so tell us a little bit about that. What do you mean by experience? What does that mean?
Yes, actually, this is a very good question. And then, just for your audience, I have just more than 13 years of experience in terms of change management. And I just more than a little bit of 10 years of bringing design and creativity into change management. So give it a more human nature. But let's be specific, because I think that the human nature needs like a specific definition of things. Although we're talking about humans, but let's consider the desire of putting frame into our definitions and what we're talking about. That's what I call myself, a translator. So I just try my best to translate things into systems so we understand it and we can simplify it. For change management, it's simply defined as taking care of people's side of the change. So all people, processes, structure in line with the strategy take us to organizational outcome. This is change management. We have many concepts like definition of change management, but this is what we are talking about here. In terms of definition of experience, experience generally is the reciprocal interaction between you as human being and your surrounding. This is called experience. And I'm gonna, get inspired a lot from the founder of experience economy, Joseph Pine, and also Dr. Robert Rossman and Matthew Darden. So they have defined so many levels to experience. But in terms of like experience in the concept of change management, I am more focused on how people feel and how people have the interactions between them, their surrounding, their tool, their let's say the culture, organizational culture, the structure that is being changed, all these things during the transformational journey that one company goes through. So it's like every every touch point and every experience that people go through it is called the employee experience during changes, and that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Very, very good. Yeah, that's and you bring up a good point, which is it's every touch point. It's not a program. And I also want to go back to your concept of creativity and like this idea of the creative process. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works in the design of an employee experience?
Yes, so we are talking about the design of employee experience, let's say during the change initiatives. I don't like to talk about change as a project because it's not a project. It's just an experiential journey through one point to a point A to point B, let's say. And then creativity, you know, we are sometimes like mistaken creativity with, like, let's say that's bringing a new product or like, you know, create a new service in organizational, like, let's say context. But again, definition of creativity is like creative problem solving, like you solve the problem in a way that it was not solved or it was not, you know, look at from like the old perspective. So this is what we call creative, like creativity in organizational transformation, because, you know, change is famous to fail. I don't want to just, you know, tap into the myth of like 70% failure or all these things. However, we all know that change is hard, and then the transformational changes, which is mindset change, culture change, is harder. Like it takes time, and sometimes they say that it's also a myth. I tell you that to me, the cultural change is not a myth, but it's just, you know, finding creative problem solving approaches to tackle the problem or issue or like all the resistances to change from a new perspective. This is what I call creativity, and that's where design and all like design approaches come into play in terms of designing employee experience for transformational change.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is you've got this kind of, and I'll let you kind of walk us through what experience change management, what the components are. But what I'm hearing so far is you need a framework, you need
Yes.
structure around it, the sandbox in which I call it. But then it's kind of a mentality shift for
Yes.
everybody to be in a mentality of seeing the human experience and the employee experience from end to end. And when I say end to end, it's really not end to end because there's not a start and an end.
Yeah, you're right.
So what are the components of experience-based change management? I probably just butchered this. From your perspective, from your expert perspective, what are the components?
Okay, so you know, let's take a look on the elements of the, you know, things that are here involved in terms of the change management itself, like traditional change management. So here we have an organization, let's say, so it's a structure, it's a culture. And then we have a stakeholders. So stakeholders are different groups of people. They are either like they are leaders or like what we call the sponsors of the change, or they are people who are influenced by change. So these are like what we call the stakeholders of change. And then we have the components of change. So we usually ask what's changing, right? And then there are a specific definition about like what change looks like in terms of like designing change first. So the change itself has many details and components to it, but let's call change all the tools, all the that will change, all the structure that will change, the strategy that will change, or the mindset and behavior, like targeted mindset and behaviors that will change. So this this is the umbrella term like for the box of like, let's say, change management and what we're dealing, right? In terms of having like designing experience-based change management, we have the focal point is human, and human is like what I call the stakeholders, right? So either the group of decision maker who we call the sponsors, or the group of people that are influenced by change. And these are different group of a stakeholder. So and this is the important part, because you know you cannot design change for the whole group as just one just fits all. So the component, it's like the persona, the representative of the specific group of people that we are just designing change, and we are designing the touch points or like the experiences that this specific group of people are going through, these specific touch points and moments that matter through transitioning through phase 1, 2, 3 from A to B to Z, right? So the component of experience-based change management, they come from like design or human-centered design, which are like personas that is translated to a stakeholder in traditional change management. And then in traditional change management, or what I call like, let's say, change management in general, we have different assessments, like let's say readiness assessment, we have change assessment, we have risk assessment, resistance assessment, and a stakeholder impact and assessments and analysis. So one important aspect is like we just take the persona, the representative of the stakeholders, and just design all these elements of the change and experience, so we can see that how they will be feeling and like operating and acting and all these things through change. So this will translate to a stakeholder impact assessment. And then this will be a more like bigger concept that what we currently use in change management, because it has all the elements of engagement and moments that matter and employee journey and all these things into it. So basically, in a nutshell, the component of change, experience-based change management are personas and all the feelings and operations and emotions that go through that they are going through the different touch points in their journey through transitioning from A to B.
Yeah, and it's kind of what I've noticed just with the research and the change management industry as a whole is we're kind of becoming more and more parallel with like your typical marketing design, right? Mm-hmm. So very much so, like you mentioned, the personas. So
yeah,
really looking at the stakeholders as people and saying what are they wanting? What are they wanting to experience? What's going on in their lives that's going to impact how they react to this change or that change? And the moments that matter are really like the critical, like you can't over engineer each and every single step, but there's certain steps that you should over engineer because they matter a lot.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, thank you, Angela. That's it. And then I think that again, it's a translation of like customer experience, because many of us are, familiar with customer experience, and then the concept of like customer persona, customer journey map. And then from the other side, it's like employee persona, employee journey map. And then there are so many similarities between the two fields, but also so many like differences between the two fields, because actually we are like customers are customers, like we're targeting at like creating great experiences for customers. But here employees are our stakeholder, like the building block of building the experiences. So it's like experience in the heart of experience. So that's why the concept of employee experience becomes so important.
Yeah, because it's ultimately the team member, the employee's experience that is going to create the customer, the consumer experience.
Yeah, yes. So they should have a great experience so they can create a great experience, like just longest story short.
Exactly. Yeah. And, I worked a lot with, I mentioned this in another episode, but I used to work with Kaiser Permanente. And so they have a very large healthcare system. And if you really think about the impact, think about COVID-19, for example, the experience that we're giving to our nurses and our frontline workers are going to translate over into either more crisis for the person at the end of that, or perhaps less crisis. And so you're also changing you're changing the world a little bit in that when it comes to healthcare or these really impactful industries that provide care, save lives. the nurturing of that employee base from a human-centric perspective is important to transfer over.
Exactly. Yeah. Happy employee, happy customers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what would you, because obviously we know this is the right thing to do. We know that this works. Design thinking is something that is also used, like you said, with problem solving. So other than moving the needle on change, what other problems does design thinking and human-centered design solve?
In terms of design, these we call them like human-centered design, and then the other they I mentioned that in one other speaking opportunity, that it's also like expanded to life-centered design, because it's a deep dive into our interaction as human beings, but not the center of the work, because obviously we're talking about sustainability as well. We're talking about nature and the earth, that's it. And I introduced myself as like a nature lover, and I think that one of the aspects of design is bringing this holistic view and approach into the complex network of like humans and all the surroundings, like the complex nature of the earth, let's say. So I think that if we just move our superficial points of view a little bit deeper into like how our interaction can change like organizational culture, then it can change like our just results and interaction with customers, and then it can change the whole ecosystem of like business, and then we can tap into the concept of sustainability. Then we are successful to just say that we just touch a little bit of these like the problems of sustainability. Because there is a criticism that when we talk about human-centered design, it's just we are the center of the universe, and then everything is just focused on us. But if the holistic view about like this interaction, the experience with surroundings, it's so important, then we can translate everything into sustainability, and then how it is just the back and forth reciprocal interaction between us and our surrounding, our nature, our customers as a whole. So I think that this will be one important aspect of design and design thinking that can help us. And let me shed light on that, because I'm just not very a person that just blindly accept one approach or one problem solving. It's just being the holistic, see that okay, so if we need to like use design, let's use it. If this is appropriate, let's use it. But sometimes for some problems it's not appropriate, right? So then that's why it's not working, and that's what so many criticism is just following. However, if we assess the problem and then design is a match, so let's use it, because it gives us this broader approach to create a more harmonious, like let's say, ecosystem around us.
Great. Do you have an example of when it wouldn't be appropriate? What's a good way to gauge?
So yes, so usually so in change management we talk about different changes. So we have like let's say one enhancement change, or incremental changes, or transformational. So when usually I talk about design and this holistic approach and experience-based approach, is more about like transformational, because there are so many hidden variables to this like equation that we don't know, so we use design. But when the change is enhancement, let's say that you're changing a button in your system, right? Or like you're changing, you're just tweaking something or debugging something, or like, so then, you know, you don't need to complicate these things, right? So you don't, or like, let's say that it's a math equation. So like you have all the variables, you know that, okay, so you have data for X, you have data for Y, and then if you just, you know, multiply these two, you will get results. So then you, why complicate things? Just, you know, a straightforward, and then you can rely on quantitative approach. However, when we talk about change, especially these days, we're not about talking about enhancement or not even incremental, like a step by step. We talk about disruption. We talk about like culture change. So that's why we talk about actually wicked problem that have so many variables to it. We don't have enough data. We don't have enough, even we don't have clear definition of what's going on, what the problem is, what the change is. So that's why we need human-centered or even life-centered approaches.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of the things I think about is another example might be when it's making it easier on the human. Like you know for a fact that the change is going to be easier on the human. So for example, you know, if you're a hospital system and you're moving from 3 steps to 1 step, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
for the end user. And that's, it requires no additional behavior change or difference in what they're doing. I think those things where there's automation, where you don't need human touch, I think
Yeah.
that's another example. But again, it's, to your point, the journey mapping is really important to understand where are there moments that matter where you might need something more complex and designed versus it's kind of a it's quantitative, right? We're going from 3 steps to 2 steps, or this button to that button. So you bring up
Yes, exactly. And I like, Angela, how you make healthcare examples, because this is so relevant to our situation. And it's just, you know, yeah, when you can reduce like just 3-step process to 1 and then save time, or like in emergency or these things. So why not? But yeah, if it is just 3 steps, so then there are hidden steps that the just, you know, the patient doesn't know, and then it doesn't change the life of the patient. It doesn't need the patient to learn anything, for example. Then yeah, it's a tweak. Why not? But then if the patient is used to one processes, and then the processes is just something else, or look something else, or the color of the page is something else, then you need to just, you know, dive a little bit deeper to understand how they behave, how they experience these things. So, and then there is a level of complexity, even like some changes need a little bit of like deep dive. Some changes need a lot of deep dive, and that's why like it's time consuming and it's expensive. But I think evaluating the problem help us really save time, help us save energy, save cost. And that's why we need to define the problem first.
great.
Yeah.
Well, what else? I first of all, I want to thank you so much for your insights. I mean, you, I think, put into perspective a very disruptive, in the best way possible, way to think about change management, which change management is all about disruption. And but taking people through it in a way that um, that suits the outcome, but also suits the human. What else do you want people to know about experience-based change management?
Uh, mm, okay, so it comes from the conversation that I had already with the expert, or like with people that I coach. It's like the question is like, are we in the uh, experience economy, attention economy, or like even feedback economy? Some people talk about like social economy, but I think it's also like feedback and attention as well, because you know, people just businesses are just competing for people's attention, right? And it's fair that we say that it's attention economy. Or like us researchers and like, you know, experienced designers, we just starve for people feedback. We just ask and interview and all these things. So we are living based on people feedback, right?
Yeah.
However, when I think about it, it's still experience economy. Like we are just trying to create experiences for people, because experience, let's just think about it. Experience is the focal point, and then we just compete for people's attention to create experience for them. And in change management, we say that we create awareness so that we can just create the engagement and journey map for them, right? So actually, attention is a very, very first step. However, the result is like creating experience. And then the end result is not the experience, it's just, you know, make the experience memorable, positively memorable, makes the experience mindful, so they can come back to you, they can give feedback to you. So from the other way, it's the feedback loop. And then if the experience is great, people are going to give you the feedback. For example, in our change management, we talk and experience design, we interview people. And if people feel that they are being interviewed, but they're not in the reflection of result of their interviews, their points of view into the change management plan, so they stop engaging, right? And then us who start for feedback don't get the very good feedback. So in a nutshell, like attention for creating positive and memorable experiences, so people can get valuable feedback, so we can course correct and test, and then we can sustain the changes as we go. So that's why I want to add that that's why experience and creating great experiences are so important here. And we should not just be taken for granted that even like social environment, social like, let's say the concept of social networks and all these things is just, you know, creating the experience of sense of belonging, like being important in a group, being meaningful, purposeful. So these are all just experiences.
Awesome. Well, Behnaz, it was a pleasure talking with you. I could talk about this all day because this is one of my favorite topics, and you're so insightful and knowledgeable on it. So thank you so much for joining, and I'm sure I'll see you soon, because I know we're going to be working together on some stuff with some research around human-centered design. So
that's great. Yes, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm so happy to can be just sharing my ideas here. It was a good experience for me. Yes. Thanks for
Perfect. I'm so glad, and you've been wonderful. So thank you so much.